Services can be injected into many areas of ASP.NET Core. Here's how you do it. In a controller, we inject the services as part of the constructor's parameters, and then we store the references to them. The references are private read-only fields, which means that we can use it throughout the controller. With minimal APIs, once we've added the root, we can inject any services that we need as part of that endpoint. We can then use them once they're injected. With middleware, if you're using a singleton service lifetime, you can inject it as part of the constructor. However, if you're using scoped or transient service lifetimes, you need to inject them as part of the invoke async method. From there, you can use these methods as part of the invoke async method. With razor pages or views, you can use the inject directive, specify the type that you wish to inject, and then give it a name. From there, you can use it as part of the razor page or view. Now that's how you inject services, but how do you actually register them? Before we show you how to register services, remember to subscribe to the channel and leave a like for the video. And let me know in the YouTube comments what you think about dependency injection. Now let's have a look to see how we can register services. In program.cs, you either call the add singleton, add scoped, or add transient extension methods depending on the service lifetime that you're registering. We're registering a number of services here. Let's have a look at the category storage service. All this is doing is it's storing all the category types as part of a read-only property. We're then registering a scope. It's a category service implementation which implements the iCategory service. This is injecting the category storage service into the constructor's parameter, and then from there, based on the ID that's been passed through as part of the parameter, it's getting the type. The last one is a transient. It's a category random service implementation which implements the iCategory random service. What this is doing is it's injecting the category storage service, it's getting a random ID, and then it's returning that as part of the random category type property. To learn more about how the different service lifetimes work and how you register them, watch this video how to use lifetimes in ASP.NET Core dependency injection by going to youtube.com/roundthecode. There's also a link for it in the YouTube video description. We've registered the services and injected them. The next step is to start using them, and we'll start with minimal APIs. In our minimal API endpoint, we're injecting the services here. We're going to start with the category storage service. When we go in there, we've got this types property, and this lists out all the category types. So we're just going to list them out as part of the response. So we're going to call it category types, and we'll call category storage service, and then we get the types property. If we have a look at the category service, we've got this get category type method. It passes in an ID of an integer. It calls the category storage service and the types. Now we want to get the electronics category. We can see that's an ID of 1, so that's what we're going to return. So we're going to call it electronics, and we call the category service the get category type method, and we pass in 1 as the parameter. We have a look at the category random service. It gets a random ID and then stores that random category from the storage service as part of the random category type property. We're just going to call that as part of the response. So we call category random service.random category type. When we run that minimal API endpoint, it's outputting all the category types. It's correctly getting the electronics type as well, and it's outputting a random category type. If we run the endpoint again, it's now outputting a different random category type. And the reason being is that it's a transient service, so it's creating a new instance every time. So we'd expect it to have a different category, unless it's the same random category that's selected from last time. You can download the code example for this tutorial by going to roundthecode.com/examples. There's also a link for it in the YouTube video description. So that's how you do it with minimal APIs, but it works slightly different with web API controllers. As we've mentioned earlier, we inject the services as part of the constructor's parameters, and then we store references to them as part of these private read-only fields. We can then use them as part of this endpoint. We're going to return a similar response to what we did with the minimal APIs. So we'll get the category types. We'll get that from the category storage service. We just call the types property. Then we get the electronics. So we call category service, and we get the get category type method, passing in 1 as the parameter. And then we're just going to get a random type. So we call the category random service, and we call random category type. When we run that web API endpoint, it's outputting the category types, also the electronics type and a random category type. If we keep running it a few times, the random category type changes. If you use Razor pages or views, you can use the inject directive to inject services into them. Here's how you do that. This is an MVC controller. We've got a categories method and it's returning a view. Within that view, we're calling the inject directive, specifying the type and then a name for it. We can then populate the same values as we did earlier. We're using the JSON.serialize to serialize it to JSON. So we call category storage type and the types property. We get the category service, we get the category type method, pass in 1 as the parameter. And then the category random service, we just get the random category type method. When outputting the response is adding the same values as last time, we refresh it, it's outputting a different random category as well. Middleware works slightly differently with dependency injection. You can only inject singleton service lifetimes into the constructor. This is because the middleware only has a single instance for the application's lifetime. With that in mind, how do we inject scoped and transient service lifetimes? We're registering an iCategory service as a scoped service lifetime. In the category middleware, we're injecting that as part of the constructor's parameter. But when we run the application, we're getting this exception, cannot resolve scope service iCategory service from root provider. Let's now remove that scope service lifetime from the constructor's parameter in the middleware. We're also registering a transient service lifetime of iCategory random service. Once again, we're injecting that into the constructor's parameter in the middleware. The application runs, but it's outputting a random category type of electronics. If it does it a few more times, it's still outputting the same random category type of electronics because the transient is acting like a singleton. The solution is to inject the scope service lifetime and the transient lifetime into the invoke async method. When we run it now, it's outputting the electronics category and also a category random service of computers. If we run it a few more times, we can now see that the category random service is outputting the software. So the transient service lifetime is working as it should do. Dependency injection also works with primary constructors. This is where you can inject a service directly into the class declaration. Here's how you do that. We've set up a new scope service lifetime. It has a service of iCategory primary service and it uses this implementation of category primary service. As part of that, we're injecting the iCategory service as part of the class declaration. We've then got a get software category type and it's getting the category service and it's getting the category type with an ID of 4. We've set up a web API endpoint calling the category primary service and that method we just talked about. Let's see if it's going to run. The response is outputting our category, meaning that we can successfully inject services using primary constructors. With MVC and web API controllers, you can inject services directly into endpoint methods. However, they work slightly differently depending on which one you use. An MVC controller will inherit the controller class. We set up a new getComputersCategory method and it's trying to inject the category service into it. However, there's an issue when we run it. It comes up with this exception saying it could not create an instance of the iCategory service. So how do we resolve that? We add the from services attribute before specifying the type. Now when we run it, it's outputting the response. A web API controller will typically inherit the controller base class. It can inherit the controller class, but the controller base class is more lightweight. But the main difference is that it includes this API controller attribute. So when we inject a service into a web API endpoint, we don't have to include the from services attribute. And that is shown here when we run the web API endpoint, and it's outputting our computers category. So that's how you inject services into an ASP.NET Core application. But what if you want to inject multiple implementations of the same service? Watch this video next to find out how to do that. And if you want to download the code example for this tutorial, you can go to roundthecode.com/examples. There's also a link for it in the YouTube video description. Leave any comments that you have about injecting services, and I'll see you on the next video.